Welcome, friends, to episode 167 of the Note Coach podcast. I am super excited to invite Mark Silver to join us today. And we're going to be chatting about vending machine spirituality, among other things. But before we dive in, Mark's just written a book. I'm going to plug at the beginning, which I don't normally, but anyway, called Heart-Centered Business. And I'm holding it up. If you're not on the YouTube, come watch it on YouTube. If you're in
Spelled
Australia,
in the Yankee way.
I was going to say, if you're Australian, the center is spelt in the American way. So maybe just if you go to Amazon or wherever and put in Mark Silver, you'll find it. About
Although
halfway
you
through.
gotta say, there's somebody else out there named Mark Silver who's doing all kinds of use Chat GPT to hustle money.
Oh no,
people. So
I haven't seen that. Not that Mark Silver.
That's not me. Different.
Oh my goodness, no!
I just discovered
okay.
this. Yeah,
I did not know that. I didn't come across that.
Oh, good.
Heart-Centered Business. About halfway through the book, so for transparency, there's so many good moments. So I don't want to give any spoilers, but something you talk about, Mark, that I wanted to chat on this show about. You spoke about paint by numbers in business and vending machine spirituality. And what I took from the book, and I'd love to hear your take on this, is often when we're given a process or a guide or something, and we're like, if I do X and Y, then I will get Z. And it does, or do you guys say Z or Z? I assume so, because I know Z, whatever. And it doesn't happen. And then we make that mean something about ourselves personally, like I'm a failure or I'm not cut out for this. And then so we go to the next bright, shiny thing. I've been known to say I've never met a shiny object I didn't like. So what's your take on this, please, Mark?
Well, it's natural. Of course, there's lots of things where if you do if you do X, you get Y and Z or Z. And, I love to cook and we have recipes and you follow the recipe and it comes out, usually.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, occasionally, occasionally it doesn't, but usually it's pretty dependable. But the thing about business is that it has to do with relationships and other people. You're not using other people like ingredients. I'm not like, oh, my customers, I'm just going to form them into bagels or whatever. It's just like, it depends on what their needs are also and what's going on with them. And they get to be sovereign human beings and make their own choices. And with spirituality, it's a slightly different, the vending machine spirituality is something that I really, I feel really exhausted by, because there was this idea kind of similar, that's why you brought them up together, where, okay, put in a prayer, get out a candy bar, whatever the equivalent of the candy bar is. And I think that that's a really kind of, not to be too judgy, but it's a little bit of an immature way of relating. It's how a child might relate, quite totally appropriate in certain developmental stages spiritually. But it's like, again, it's a relational experience with the source of love, with the divine, with the oneness, with the universe. And I'm not able to, I'm not interested in being in relationship with the universe that is just easily manipulated by my ego or will. One, it's not clear evidence, because the world looks the way it does. But I don't think that would really honor my own growth and my own happiness, to just always get what I want. We want to meet and be collaborative. So much of what's been lost in our culture is a sense of collective care, a sense of collaboration, a sense of, oh, you know what? If I surrender this desire of mine, I can actually get something even better by doing something with other people. And I'll just round it off with this. There's this Sufi teaching that says, beware of hating that which is good for you and loving that which is not good for you.
So many pieces I want to bring out. First thing, that from what you just said, it's almost transactional, as in, and at least the vending machine, if I want to purchase a packet of chips and it says it's $2 and I put $2 in, I get the packet of chips.
Right.
Whereas, this isn't transactional. Because there's another part in the book, I think it was earlier on, where you spoke about you were at a retreat or a seminar or something or other, and they were calling people up to, to lead or to help co-teach, and you desired that. You're like, I want to be
Oh,
picked.
yeah.
And I love how it's not denying that you have a desire. It's not ignoring it. It's not making yourself bad for wanting things, but that
Mm-mm.
surrendering of, acknowledging that you want this thing. And I think sometimes in surrender, at least for me, you can get even more. Like if you're like, not that you do it to get, but it's like, if
You
I want
can't.
this
You can't because
thing,
it doesn't work if you surrender in order to try to
yeah,
get
it
something
doesn't
like a
work like
technique.
that. But sometimes it's like, I want this, like I want this thing. And then we only see one way of getting it and we're very blinkered. And in that kind of surrendering it, it's like, oh, and these other things I didn't even see become available.
I think that that's so true. I think it's true in life generally. It's certainly true in business, and it's true in our spiritual lives as well.
Yes. And the other thing that you said that made me think of this is, when we do a strategy or read a book or, do something, I remember when my children were very young, or my daughter, and she just wouldn't sleep. And I spent, I don't know how much money and time and energy when I had very little of all of them, reading all these sleep books and everything. And this moment of pure frustration saying to my husband, I don't understand. Like, I've done all the things. And he's like, well, obviously Xanthi hasn't read the sleep book. So it's like people, business, spirituality, whatever it is, it doesn't come with a manual. It's not to say don't reach out and get support, but don't be so like fundamental or so like the book
well,
said this would happen.
well, it doesn't come with a recipe in that same way, but it does come, I mean, like there's so many spiritual paths that have centuries of experience in them, or there's, like there's lots of people teaching about business, and we tend to we use templates as a way to teach, but we really highlight principles because we're not trying to, like, it's not cookie cutter, right? It's not paint by
Yes.
number. It's like each person has to express themselves, and yet the early part of the learning process can look a little bit paint by number because you're just learning, you're just figuring it out. And so to follow somebody else's template just to, like training wheels, like just to get your arms around it, is really, really helpful, but not to mistake that for for the truth, so to speak. And so we do want to learn from each other, and we do want to do a little bit of monkey see monkey do in the beginning of the learning process because it's helpful, but to not become attached to that way of doing or thinking. Like at some point we have to integrate. At some point it's going to be way more fulfilling and way more successful, to do it the way that feels right to us, as long as we're cognizant of the principles that we're working with, and not, trying to do something that, like if you're playing ball, you need to pay attention to gravity, and there's just certain things to kind of know about how the world operates or how relationships tend to work. But yeah, just really heart-centered, love-based relationships are at the heart, I think, of everything both fulfilling and effective.
And I think that's something else you mentioned in the book. So there's the 4 stages, I think you call them the 4 stages of business. And for me, for reading that, like where I felt a sigh of relief was like, I don't ever actually want to get to stage 4. And I think in
Right.
that alone, there's just relief. So for people often, and you speak to this in the book, when you come into business, some people teach, not to be judgy, but, 6 figures in 60 days or 6 weeks or 6 months, I don't know. But we've all come across these things where you do all these things that kind of maybe make you feel gross and very formulaic. Whereas in your approach, and you talk about in the book, and similar, spirituality, business, how you do one thing, how you do most things, there are pillars or there are places and understandings, but looking what feels good and aligned for you rather than absolving yourself of what feels good to you in effort to try and grasp something. I think that leads into that, vending machine or paint by numbers. It's like, I want this so much and I get really graspy and hustly, but actually I think a big part of your approach is identifying what do you want. And I was like, I don't want a stage 4 business where I am, everybody else is doing it for me and I'm the CEO. I'm in my business because I like doing what I do.
Right, right. And just to make that clear for people, like, I've been doing this since 1999 in one form or another. Heart of Business became what it is in 2000, 2001 is when we first really started at that level, and like 4,000 plus businesses. And so I've just really observed these developmental stages that micro business, small businesses go through. And the third stage is what we call momentum. First stage, creation; second stage, concentration; third stage, momentum. And momentum is like the solo business with just enough help, because there's a big myth of like the total solo successful solo entrepreneur. We all need help. At least please get an accountant, a bookkeeper, and a web designer, unless web design is what your business is. But it's like um uh but you can get to a business that is dependable, that is abundant, that is running well at the third stage. But most people think that they need to get to the fourth stage, where you actually have a company, you have a team, you have employees, you have people doing like the customer delivery for you, client delivery, for you, and it becomes an entity. It's there's nothing inherently wrong with going to that level, but you have to know what you're up for. And it is way different. It is like first, second, third stage, you're basically kind of building on the same thing and moving along the same line. And then from a stable stage 3 to go to stage 4 is an entirely different game, a whole different set of skills to learn, and a whole lot of resources that are needed to get to that. And whenever someone says they're interested in that, there's questions that I ask, and I push back hard, because I want to make sure that they're doing it for reasons that make sense for them and their life, that it's something that actually they're compelled to, rather than thinking they have to.
And for anyone listening, Mark goes really clearly into these stages in the book, so really highly recommend that you grab it. And the other thing that you said that really stood out is that it's how do you say it? It's like iterative, like you go through the
Yes.
state. It's not like a once and done, because I think whenever our businesses, we shift niches slightly, or we shift our offering, sometimes it can feel like, I've done it before. You assume, and we all know what they say about assuming, that everybody will understand or get it because you do, and you're really clear on it, and you make this shift and you offer this new thing, and it's like, so what happened? And it's like, I need to go back through the stages again with this new lens or this new focus. And sometimes it's heaps faster because you have the clarity that you've had before, and a lot of your audience will come along. But there sometimes I've seen where I've accidentally, inadvertently just assumed and had things not go as I'd hoped.
Yes. Yes. It's so true. And let me say that there's another dynamic that comes up, because a lot of times what happens as people do their business for a certain amount of time, they start to gain mastery, and then they want to go deeper. They want to go deeper with clients. They want to, sometimes they want to bring spirituality in, but even if it's not that, even if it's just, I want to do like deeper work with people, they mistakenly think that that means that the business needs to be started from scratch, and they need a new audience and a new everything. And so many times I've had to slow people down and say, please don't throw your business away. That's because a lot of times that deepening process is something that is profound for the business owner and barely noticeable for the clients in a certain way. There's like this big change of entering in like a different reality. And when these are a spiritual process, like in Sufism, we talk about it, as finesse, kind of an annihilation as we go deeper and deeper and deeper. And it is profound, and it does seem radically different. The world looks different, and there's more that you're carrying in your heart, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't really mean that the business has to change. It doesn't mean that the audience has to change. Sometimes it does, but it's rare. And so there are so many times that people want to make changes to their business that they think are huge and need an announcement, that are actually, yes, important and profound and noticeable to the business owner, but barely noticeable at all to the clients.
Oh, I've been there as well. So this has been awesome. We're already at time, Mark. So can you let the listeners know what you do and where they can find you?
Yes, well, We help people who really want to make a difference in the world and their business needs to work. They need to make a profit. We're doing it for 23 years with thousands of businesses. You can find us. Our business lives at heartofbusiness.com. You can start by downloading an excerpt of the book, or you can just go get it, and that will give you kind of the deep dive into our approach. And yeah, and that's the basics.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I highly recommend for everyone, Heart Centered Business, grab the book. As I said, I'm only halfway through. I've read a lot of business books, but I love how you break it down so simply, and the inclusivity that you speak with language, and also the different elements of the 4 stages. Yeah, it's very inclusive, and it's just like, for rereading it, like, oh, someone speaking how it truly is, not this, the Easter egg, like bright and shiny on the outside, and then you go in there, it's like, oh, this is crap. It's not like that. It's like, this is how it really is.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me, Mark. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.